Christian Baelish.
Here.
Michael Ho.
Here.
Susan Klein.
Here.
Jackie Katz.
Here.
Brian Beachkowski.
Here.
Jara Moore.
Still connecting to audio.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Jara is still connecting.
It's Kiara before she gets
Jara,
in here.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's okay. I just wanted you to know.
Well, I'm glad you're connected. So I'm acting as the chair right now because there is no current chair, and I am the only other position on the committee, the clerk. We have hopefully a very short agenda tonight. First of all will be the reorganization of the committee. As you know, Arthur has resigned from the committee, and therefore we need to elect a new chair and then elect a clerk. There's been some suggestion that we should consider electing a vice chair for exactly situations like this. We can discuss that at the time after we get through the first couple of appointments or selections. Having said all that, I'd open it up to the committee members for discussion of that part of the agenda. The other two parts of the agenda, I think, is to talk to Blythe a little bit about what the schedule might be for the spring town meeting, and then just briefly adoption of minutes. Has anyone got any issues with that? Okay. So we are looking for individuals who want to be the chairperson of the advisory committee. I'll be honest, I'm interested in the position. I'd be happy to talk about that. But if anyone else is interested, I'd like to hear from them now.
Should we go in order of when we were appointed? Because I believe
we did that with Arthur. I know I've only been on the committee for 3 years, and we certainly can choose to go that route. I don't know. I think our oldest member at this point, and I mean that in terms of their service, is Jonathan. And then probably Brian.
I think
go ahead.
I believe it goes, I believe it goes Jonathan, Brian, me, you, Kristen, Mike, Kiara. Is that correct? I believe. And then whoever the newest person is. I don't know if Jay has weighed in yet on if he has anybody.
I think Jackie has more tenure than Kristen, is my recollection.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yes. Apologies.
And Mike was before me, I think.
Yeah. Mike was after David.
Yes.
So.
Are any tenured people interested? Curious. Jonathan, Brian.
I have nothing against it. I do worry about my travel schedule, especially when COVID comes up. I do travel quite a bit and have missed meetings in the past for work. So I don't want to sign up for something that I can't faithfully execute. In fact, I'm in DC right now traveling for work.
I mean, you're not in front of the gazebo at 4 hours ago? Are you sure?
It's still beautifully sunny here. Yeah.
6 months ago, not 4 hours ago. And I guess, Jonathan, we're waiting for your interest level.
I would respectfully decline to serve as chair, by and large for the same reasons as Brian. I would travel quite a bit for work, and I'm expecting that that's going to pick back up in the next 6 months or so. So I would prefer that someone who can make more of a committed effort to serve as chair. I just honestly don't think I'd have the time necessary to do it justice.
Susan?
Yes, I could do it. That's
Are you
fine.
interested in doing it?
Well, I don't work full time, so I don't have that issue. I did start a new business, but that's not going to take full time work. And usually summers are a problem for me, but after this summer it won't be. So I can do it if you want. I would be interested, but I don't have to, I guess is the way I look at it. I mean, I could definitely do co-chair with someone. We could have two. That way, someone's always available.
Or we could do a chair, vice chair situation as well.
Yeah. If I know, just simply because Brian and Jonathan have been there longer, if they would like to do co-chairs, I'd be interested in that. I definitely can't do the clerk position. I don't want to do the clerk position. I would happily do the chair position with a vice chair or a co-chair, however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, just someone as backup, to make sure that we're covering everything correctly and those types of things. So if Jonathan or Brian are interested in doing co-chairs, that would be fine.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think that would probably fit better from available time perspective. So I'd be happy to serve in that capacity.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. As that's my main thing. It's more of a co-chair than a chair and vice, and then the chair can't be there for for town meeting, and then you just drop that in someone's lap. That seems a little bit unfair. But if we go into it understanding that it's really more about who's available that time, and that we split the workload, I think that's an option.
Okay, so if Brian and Jonathan would like to do it together, that's certainly they can, or I can do it with either one of them.
And just backing up 1 second, you could probably make co-chairs work. There's no legal real barrier to it, but the chairperson is responsible for the agenda as a matter of law. So if there's they would really have to both agree, or kind of, and it's usually pretty mellow because it's a one issue kind of committee, well, 2 issues, but you could do it. Just know that chair and vice chair works a little bit better, but you could do it. Just got to communicate. It's just more communication between the two of you. If you decide to do co-chair, you make it work.
Well, I can definitely do the chair as long as there's, a backup just in case. I mean, again, like I said, I don't work full time, so I don't have an issue usually, but I do have 4 children. So something could technically come up just like it could with anyone, and I would like to have someone else there as, sort of backup, whether it's to bounce ideas off of, make sure we're doing everything correctly, God forbid something were to come up at the last minute, someone who could take over. That's not a problem if either of the guys want to do it that way. I'm saying I don't mind taking the lead if they don't want to. If they would like to take the lead, I also don't mind being vice chair for either one of them. Whatever, just because they have the most seniority, whatever they would like to do. And if like I said, if they don't want to be the head, the actual chair, I will do that. And then one of them can be vice chair. It's fine. However you want to call it, whatever you want to label it as.
Yeah, I definitely don't need to be the chair and would happily defer if someone is more inclined to want that. Dave, you said you would. Susan, you said you put your name in. We haven't heard from some other folks too, but if there are people who are interested in taking that on, I would be happy to be a vice chair to fill in if someone else needs to.
I mean, obviously David has said he's interested, so I don't want to bypass that, right? Just because we're looking at seniority. I haven't been here long enough to know if seniority has always been how it's done or if we're open to other ideas. Just want to say that.
It's always been, to my knowledge, that it goes in order. It goes in order of seniority, and people take it as they see fit down the line, and then it goes down until someone takes it over. So it would just go in order. I would assume that there's lots of times it's the most senior person, but then I would assume that there's been issues where the most senior person doesn't want it, so they defer. So in essence, I believe Jonathan and Brian were appointed fairly similarly to each other. So it would really be up to them. And then David and I were next. So I believe I was right before David. Not that that matters at all. I think we both have 3 years. So. I just know I don't want the clerk position. So I know when we're talking about restructuring, I would take the chair position. I would not want the clerk position.
Nobody wants the clerk position, trust me.
I know.
On the
Unfortunately,
other
nobody
hand,
wants that.
I'll be honest, the clerk position for the last year has sucked because we had several years worth of lost and unapproved minutes that had to be gone through, and we're done. There's no backlog now, so there's no real backlog now. The clerk's position is honestly, hopefully Amy gets you the minutes quickly, which she has done very well with me. You review them, you make edits to them, you send them back to Amy when you're comfortable that they're an accurate portrayal of what happens, and then we vote on them. So it's with a set of minutes, unless it's a 4-hour meeting, it's a half an hour's worth of work to review those. Basically, it's really not a burden. I mean, I did have to go through minutes from meetings that almost none of us, in fact, I think in some cases, none of us were actually on the committee at the time, which turns out to be a little bit problematic, obviously. And there's been a couple meetings where Sue or someone else was not available, and I'm still looking at the audio from a meeting from the spring, trying to figure out exactly what happened. Audio and video, I should say. But I don't know. I'm just making that statement because I'm happy to, I have to finish up the minutes that I've got in front of me right now for one thing, but which I'm mostly done. So there's one meeting that I have not finished yet, but having said that, going forward, it should be pretty straightforward. We have an administrative person, Amy, and if we have a clerk, it's a 2-part symphony there, and you get your work done.
David, can I ask about how many hours a month you spend on the clerk work, or if it was a normal?
So let's pretend it's a normal spring, and we have maybe 6 meetings leading into town meeting, and none of them are longer than 3 or 4 hours. It's probably a half an hour or an hour each on the minutes from each of those meetings. And if you jump on it right away, which I confess that I don't always jump on them right away, which means sometimes you have to go back and look at the video, but it's an hour's worth of editing work. You read what's in front of you, and you clean it up. You clarify things that may not be clear. You make sure everyone's name is spelled correctly, stuff like that. I
Okay.
guess on the,
Kristen, are you interested in taking over the clerk role if David doesn't want to continue in the clerk role?
Not as of yet. I was just helping us
I do think
understand that as a group.
Kristen or whoever, I do think it's a good idea to have a conversation with myself, obviously, and maybe someone at the town level. Meeting minutes have to be put in a format that is viable to be, because once we approve them, they become a legal document. So they are the record of the meeting at that point. And if there's issues between the video and the minutes, then you've got problems there, stuff like that. But it's not that big a deal, and I'm not trying to scare people away, but they become the record, the official record of the meeting once we adopt them. So
All right, so Jonathan, how do you feel? Brian, how do you feel? What do we want to do?
I would suggest we just hear nominations and then take a vote. I don't think it needs to go seniority. Is my position, Jonathan?
Yeah, I would concur on the seniority piece for sure. I think it's more important for someone who's interested in and able than just old.
I'm interested. I think I'm able. I've chaired a couple of town committees. I've run meetings on a number of different governmental levels. I think I have a good understanding how municipal budgeting works. If not, I have Todd's cell phone number, so I can call him at any point. That's primarily meant to be a joke, but don't think I won't use it blithe. And that's sort of my pitch on that. So I'm happy to defer to folks I'm happy to listen to folks who have other approaches. I do think that continuing on in the current budget climate we have, which I'm assuming we'll hear about more both today and in upcoming meetings. I think we need to, as a committee, be willing to question some of the assumptions that are made, but also acknowledge the issues that our town and other towns are facing under the current situation.
David, if you were to be chair, what's your feeling on having a vice chair?
I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I was asked that by someone, and I think it might have been our moderator, who's the vice chair, and I said, I don't think we have one. I don't have the bylaw, our internal committee rules in front of us, so I'm not sure. Obviously, if we were required to appoint one, we would have. So I'm not sure we're required to have one. But if there's a reason, there's a number of reasons you might want a vice chair. Is that one is if there's an issue that directly affects whoever the chair is, that person needs to recuse themselves, and someone needs to run the meeting and run the committee based on that recusal. So the value of having a vice chair is there, obviously. And as Susan said, if there happens to be a crisis that requires a chairman not to be at a meeting or town meeting or whatever it might be, it would be valuable to have someone who is at least got the imprimatur of being the vice chair. So I don't think there's anything that would prohibit us from having a vice chair. I just don't think we don't have a requirement to have one, but I don't think there's nothing that would prohibit us from adopting one, I don't believe, or voting on one, I don't believe.
And then Susan, you said you were also good.
Yes. hmm
You have
Yes. I mean, like I said, I don't have a pitch. Just that, I'm available. I don't have a full-time job and I'm happy to do it. I'm fairly involved in town government and, work closely with both the select board and different committees and Blythe and school committees and things like that. I have a good working relationship with most of them. I understand the budgeting process, I understand the meeting process. That's all. It's up to you guys.
Can I just say, based on what Jason was saying, like in terms of it's better probably to have a chair and a vice chair, like would Jonathan and Brian be willing to defer to like Susan to chair and David to vice chair?
I would.
Are you making a motion?
I'm just thinking that is a solution that makes sense to me based on what everybody is saying. Like it accounts for seniority and also people who want to do it. Jonathan, I didn't see is that a thumbs up from you or do you want to be co-chair?
I mean,
He really wants to be co-chair.
to speak frankly, I'm happy to do it in a co-chair, vice chair, whatever you call it, not prime chair capacity, because I think obviously I have had long-term interest in serving on the advisory committee. I have no qualms about chairing and serving that capacity other than being able to commit to the time, right? So if that is not a factor, if I can do it in that kind of lesser capacity, I have no qualms. I'd be happy to do it. I do not want to let this group down by committing to something that I won't be able to kind of fully serve in.
So in my apparent role as acting chair of this meeting, do we have a motion on approving a new chairperson / vice chair or co-chair? We need a formal motion on that.
We do them separately or do we have to do them together?
That's a good question. I think we have to do them separately, frankly, unless we're doing co-chairs, which
You could do it in one vote. Doesn't matter. There's no rules.
There's no rules.
There's no rules. Woohoo! Sorry.
Okay. It seems weird to say that, but then if there's no objections, then just based on seniority, I would say that I make a motion for Jonathan and I to be co-chair or chair and vice chair. I'm sorry, that sounds weird. I don't know if that's what you're asking me to do.
I guess that's what I am, but I do appreciate the discussion that Jay raised about the co-chair issue versus the chair issue. I do really think, given the requirements that a chairperson has in terms of their legal responsibilities, in terms of putting a warrant forward and recommendations on the warrant forward, it needs to be, my personal opinion, it needs to be chair and vice chair.
Okay, then I'll make a motion for that if that's what Jay would like.
I think it's what we would like.
Okay.
Motion that for Susan to be chair and Jonathan to be vice chair.
Yes.
I would second that motion. I'll just add that I like that there's a gender balance, represents the committee, the fuller committee as well in that case.
Thank you, Kristen.
I haven't heard.
Okay.
I think Kristen
It's been
actually made the motion, so she can't second it.
I wasn't sure if I was seconding or first thing.
Oh, second.
Susan, I'm not sure you should second it either, by the way, just to let you know.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All in favor of the motion to have Jonathan, wait a minute. Could you repeat your motion? Susan as chair and Jonathan as vice chair. Please say aye. Actually, I need to call the roll on these Zoom meetings, right? If I'm not mistaken. Jonathan,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Jackie,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
Kiara, Kiara, Kiara might be busy. Susan,
Sorry,
Aye.
I had that horrible double mute. Aye.
did you say aye? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Kiara, Susan,
Yes.
sorry.
Aye.
David, aye. Okay, the vote's unanimous. Susan, you're now running the meeting. Congratulations.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, the other two agenda items were to schedule meetings out, I think, and then also
Mhm.
adoption of minutes. So
Okay. I was thinking this has nothing to do with being chair, but I would like to speak with Kevin and Blythe as far as scheduling the town meeting, Jay as well. I personally feel like Saturday last spring, and I know we did it because of COVID, but I personally felt like an outdoor meeting on a Saturday. The attendance was great. And I don't know if that's the same, if they're going to have the same line of thought for this spring, since we won't be finished with, completely finished with COVID yet, if that's an option. And I only ask that because that would depend on how to schedule the meetings and what they're thinking. Can any of you weigh in on what you're thinking for the spring, or if you've even gotten there yet?
Blythe and I have spoken a little bit about it. My feeling is that if it's an annual town meeting, so we can expect significant attendance. And I don't think we'll be at a point where I will feel comfortable about an indoor meeting. So my guess is we'll be outside. If there's a huge sea change, then so be it. We did have that meeting in the field house, which was fine, but the acoustics in there were terrible. That's the only other place that's big enough to do it, aside from like Four Kicks. So I think we can anticipate an outdoor meeting at this point. And Blythe and I've talked about it a little bit.
And if we're going to do an outdoor meeting, do you think it'll be just so we can host it during the day when it's not dark or buggy? We'll do it on a Saturday again as well.
I think it certainly makes a little bit more sense. There's been plenty of evening outdoor meetings too, but May it'll still be somewhat cool out. So Saturday may make some sense. I have the ability. I mean, we can the select board can either decide to move it from their normal date under the bylaws to a Saturday, or I could move it. It doesn't matter which. But
okay.
As we get closer, I think we'll do more planning along those lines. I have to work with Blythe, Kevin, and you all to get it straight.
My related question,
Okay.
Jay, was about if it will still be in May, or is there a potential to move it further out so that more people may have vaccines? Because the later we go, the more that's hopefully going to be true. So I was curious if there's a potential to move it into June again.
There's always that potential, Kristen. I'm going to let the science go out on that. I have to, if I move it, that would probably be the mechanism to move it at that point. If I moved it, I would have to consult with the public safety folks and just see where we are. I would love to hold it on schedule. But if we have to move it again into June, we'll do that. So I have no problem. I'm not going to risk anyone. If it's safer to do it in June, we'll do it in June.
Absolutely, safety should come first, but we do have to keep in mind the budgeting process when when the fiscal year ends. I know we ran into that last year, having it so close at the end of June. I don't think we'd have an issue if we moved it to the beginning of June. That still gives plenty of time for budgeting. So
From my
budgeting
pers-
approval.
It just impacts when we end up having our meetings, right? I feel like last year we had so many meetings because we thought we were done and then we moved it out and then had another one.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that was part of the reason why I asked the question. If it's going to be on a Saturday, then we keep our meeting schedule normal on Wednesdays up until, 2 weeks before. And we make sure that we have the warrant, done in a timely manner. I just was commenting on safety should always come first. But we do want to keep in mind that the further into June that we go, it does impact the fiscal year. We ran into that last year. We were sort of under the wire with approving of a budget, meaning if God forbid it comes up again that the budget is a big concern for people and it doesn't get approved and we have to go back, we want to leave enough time in between when the meeting is scheduled and when the fiscal year ends, in case that were to happen.
So if I can weigh in for a second, Susan. I mean, so far
Yeah.
this year, out of the gate, things are, other than COVID, somewhat normal. The governor released his budget today. We have the cherry sheet. The warrant is underway. I had already given the school a heads up that, after Jay and I talked, that an outdoor event might be necessary. So we'll ask them about the dates around then. So I think from the perspective of finishing the budget and being ready to have it in the usual time frame is very, very likely. My only concern would be the weather. Planning for a Saturday and then Mother Nature being a little difficult. So, but that's always workable.
Which is part of the reason why, if you can get it on the schedule just slightly earlier than mid-June, we have the time to reschedule it if there's inclement weather as well.
From a staff
Or if the
perspective, I
COVID
think
numbers
we'd
are,
be thrilled to get it done, sometime in May and only go to June if we have to.
yes,
Of course,
I agree.
safety first.
Okay. So I guess does anybody else have any questions on that? Looking at the calendar with an assumption, although we can't schedule it yet, but just with an assumption that it would be either May 8th or May 15th. We would need the warrant done by April, let's say it's May 15th, we'd need the warrant done by April 30th, April 28th, really. So that would mean we would need to start meeting no later than mid-March, say March 17th, depending on how many. Blythe, do you know roughly, other than the budget, which is a big one, do you know how many warrant articles we're going to have this year? Obviously, I
Not
haven't
yet.
been privy to that.
Yeah, not yet. The warrant closes on February 12th. I know there are a couple of things we've been working on, like the full animal control bylaw to be updated. There's a flood control, floodplain bylaw that we need to update. The planning board meets on the 9th of February and is considering some B1 changes, the usual CPC stuff.
Correct.
I mean, right now it doesn't look super long, but I'll definitely get
Does
you
it
that.
look like there's anything as far as the usual traps, the things that, other than the budget and possibly the B1 zoning, is there anything that looks like it would be highly contested or highly volatile, like
I
in
can't
years
imagine
past where we've had citizens
floodplains
petitions and things like that?
animal control will be super crazy, but I could be
Okay.
wrong. I did get a call from Carol Green's office today that she thinks there might be some people looking for citizen petition paperwork. I don't know what about.
Okay. All right. Those are always the interesting ones, I guess. And I would assume that there's going to be, just based on my conversations with Dr. Alardi from last year, as well as with Paul Zenny, I would assume there's going to be some pushback on the budget, at least from the school perspective. because I know that as an advisory board, we discussed making sure that even though we were cutting the budget last year, that we basically restore their budget this year, which would mean they usually try to stay in a 3% increase. And it's probably going to appear on paper as if they're at a 6% increase or something roughly around there. Obviously, I'm not speaking specifics. So there could be some pushback with that simply because it looks on paper like they're having a much larger budget than they would normally have. But really, it was just restoring the pre-COVID budget and then building on that as we normally would with cost of living increases. So we should prepare for that as well. That's not to say we have to approve it. I'm just simply saying that we should prepare to see what might appear on paper as a larger COLA increase than we've normally seen. So. Anything else? If there's nothing else, sorry, go ahead, David.
In terms of appointments, we still have to vote on a clerk.
Okay.
If anyone is inclined to that.
Yes. Is there, obviously we should still go in order of seniority, at least to start. Is there, in the same order that we went in before, is there anyone who would like to take on the role of the clerk? Or David, would you like to stay in the role of the clerk?
I would not like to stay in the role of the clerk, but I will if no one else steps up.
Okay, so Brian, that leaves you at the top. Would you like to take over the role as the clerk?
I'm not sure this needs to go in order of seniority. I apologize, but is anyone interested in being the clerk?
I didn't mean it by law. It had to. I was just offering it to people in that order first.
I would like to decline, I guess is the way to phrase that.
And
okay.
Is there anyone? The longer you've been on the committee, the less like you are to volunteer to be clerks. That's what I'm saying.
Really not selling it well.
I'm not at all.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I do what I do. So.
Is there anyone that I haven't called on before I actually call on you and put you on the spot? Is there anyone who would like to volunteer for the clerk position? Not take it if no one else does, just would actually be interested in doing it and being behind the scenes with that. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I would like to volunteer myself to be clerk of the committee.
Oh, thank you, David. Thank you.
Amy and I have built a really strong relationship over the last few months, and I want to keep that going. So,
second in.
Okay. Yeah. Then I make a motion that David Lutz is clerk of the advisory board.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? It passes unanimously. David, you are the clerk of the advisory board. Thank you so much. Okay, back to the agenda. It looks like if we assume a mid-May Saturday and or Tuesday, if it stays that way, meeting, that still puts us needing the warrant done by April 28th, conservatively. So we should probably start meeting March 10th or March 17th based on Blythe, when she gets back to us next week on how large the warrant is. If you prefer, we can start on the 10th and then eliminate some weeks if we want, or we can just hold off and start on the 17th and just go straight through. Does anyone have a preference?
Preference is to start early and then eliminate.
Okay.
The only, like, that's my default position as well, would be to start early and eliminate, but having started early and then having that mean we need to readdress the same topics because things change, I'm not sure we've actually realized the benefits of starting early and then waiting late, because even things like road acceptance seem to wait until the last minute. If we can think about the order of things that are least likely to change down the road, which I don't, I don't know if we actually can. That's a real hypothetical. Like if it's possible to even understand what things are less likely to change and be able to move those up, that would be the only thing I'd say. Like
Personally, having been here for 3 years, and I know that this isn't everyone's preference, so I'm certainly not saying that's the way it's going to be. But personally, I'd rather have fewer meetings and have them go longer and get everything done in fewer meetings. I feel like a lot of times there's a lot of repeating that we do. A lot of times we forget that we've already voted on warrant articles and we start discussing them again. However, I am available and happy to have as many meetings as we need. Does anyone else have any feedback on that?
I agree that we, like gas, expand to take up all space available. So I concur. I would rather get more things done in a smaller number of meetings.
I agree with that. Especially last year, it felt a little bit like Groundhog Day on some of the meetings. And for me, it is challenging with the kids at home to have as many meetings as we had this past spring. So fewer, longer is fine by me. And pushing a little later so that things are more solidified, I'd be in favor of, but not too late.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is anyone else?
Same.
Kiara, Mike.
I'm fine with that. I would also say that I thought last year was super helpful to have the way that the budget presentations were done, and were put together the way Blythe did it. I felt like it had a really like I had a really good solid understanding before, and I felt like I didn't need to have the same individualized presentation.
Yes. I personally, though it really has no bearing tonight, but I would like it known on the record that personally, I think the one thing we should keep from COVID is Zoom meetings. I much prefer having the documents in front of me on a screen live in a meeting versus sitting in a boardroom looking at a piece of paper. Although I know that comes down to the town rules. So I think we can get more accomplished for some reason when we're on Zoom. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because the attendance seems to be better when it's on Zoom.
One
So,
question,
Kiara,
and I know
Jackie.
I know that Jay left, but one question with regard to keeping Zoom meetings going after is that a way that we could reduce the role of the clerk? Can we in some way have the recording of the meeting be the official record of the meeting minutes? No? Okay, never mind.
No.
Never mind.
And that's one of the issues.
They don't let you do that.
That's one of the issues that the clerk needs to deal with, is how to summarize a meeting appropriately. So you're capturing all the official actions and trying to limit all the crosstalk, I guess would be. You don't want that to be official record. Not that there's anything wrong with it, unless one of us is a jerk, but it's a pretty big official record at that point.
Okay, sorry for that.
Jackie or Kiara, do you have an opinion or a thought you'd like to express?
No, the only time I've been part of this is in COVID, so I have nothing to compare it to. But I think it's been okay.
Okay. Do you have an issue with the number of meetings, or is that easy for you to manage?
No, I'm pretty flexible.
Okay. Jackie?
Well, I'm just going to be having a baby, so I prefer the Zoom meetings just so I could actually come. But I would say that my attendance might fall apart with said baby. And I think I really liked Brian's point about filling air. And I think that to me, I was kind of like, I prefer more shorter meetings, but then I was like, actually that point really resonated with me. I prefer fewer meetings.
Okay. So it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, if the group would prefer to have fewer meetings. So I'm open to shooting for March 24th and then just banging it out in no more than 5 meetings. And as the chair, I can also take a look at the warrant and schedule, instead of having, usually a lot of times what we do is we have that first meeting, we look at the warrant, and then we decide who we want to talk to. I usually have a pretty good feel on what's going to be what I call a sticking point or a trap at town meeting, and that we're going to need more information on. So I'm happy to take a look at the warrant ahead of time and go ahead and start right out of the gate, a little bit later, but go ahead and making sure everybody's ready with their budget, everybody's ready with their budget process. And also I would honestly say that having done this for multiple years now, I would honestly like to see some of the budget process just a tad shorter. There's some times where we're 3 hours and we're only on one school budget. There are school committee meetings that, we're supposed to have liaisons. I don't know if everyone is still doing that, but there are supposed to be liaisons on the advisory board to attend those different board meetings so that you can then sort of be a voice of experience when it comes to that. And if we can really do that, I think we can knock down the amount of time that we're actually listening to multiple presentations. If that's okay with everyone, I'm happy to get that organized and start sort of more to the end of March, like the 24th, and then we just have 5 meetings and we're done. If anyone has concerns about that, certainly we can start earlier. I don't want to dismiss anyone's concerns, but it sounds like the group would rather have less meetings than more.
Can I jump in for a second, Susan?
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
I couldn't understand you, Blythe. Say that one more time.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yes, please.
So I just wanted to remind everybody, we put together a draft schedule for, the run up to May 11th, if that's a date. I can resend that out to you, and hopefully that's helpful towards planning everything. We're planning to get out next week to the select board the same budget book we did last year, with kind of what the town side and the big picture looks like so far, with some unknowns. I think that together with the warrant, as soon as it closes, will give you a real good idea of where things are at.
Okay. So why don't, if no one's opposed to it, why don't we plan for either March 17th or March 24th? And I will get back to you as soon as the warrant closes, if I think we need more time or less time. Or we can just go ahead and say the 24th now.
I think we have to set a date, because you'd have to officially cancel that date. And you need to go to the committee to do that, so.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would see as part of an early review would be, Blythe, if you say that big overarching where we're looking to give top line numbers to each of the individual departments, if we want to have a meeting to review that and give our thoughts on what's appropriate for those large pieces, and then come in have a detailed budget, the only thing I can think of with fewer meetings is that we'll get to the school budget and there'll be some basic assumptions of what the total size is that may be different from where we go in, and we'll have to have a complete another detailed review because we didn't give our feedback at the high level first. So that's the only hesitance I have to waiting until later, is needing to rework a detailed budget if we don't disagree on the details, but we disagree on the larger muscle movement kind of pieces.
Okay. Well, the school committee would have already voted in their budget prior to March 17th. So if it's okay with everyone, we can just go with March 17th. And if we end early, fantastic. And if we don't, should work out to roughly 6 meetings. And I think we should be able to get it done. Again, if we need to hold, 1 earlier or 2 in 1 week, as long as we have I believe it's 48 hours notice to schedule it, we can, should that happen. I hope it doesn't. Does that work for everyone? March 17th?
Yes.
And I will work on getting, the budgets I think that are going to be the biggest talking points done first. That way they have time to go back and rework them if we need them to. And we'll put the less contentious things towards the end.
It is St. Patrick's Day, and I hope that everyone shows up in a relatively sober mood that day. But
Well, since all the bars are still closed, I think we're safe there.
that hasn't stopped a lot of people, apparently.
Might be our best meeting.
Well, this is true.
Susan, if
This is true.
If I can, I know Jay is
Mhm.
left, and maybe this is more of a procedural question of if this is legit with open meeting laws. But I would actually propose that for these budget presentations, because that's why we're there for hours in these meetings, is we're listening to the full budget presentation, and then we get into the Q&A. I would propose, I mean, we're all doing this on Zoom anyway. The people presenting the budget, I would propose that they actually just do a Zoom recording and record it in advance of our meeting, right? We could post that video on the town website or on YouTube the same way we would post any other meeting that we have, so that presentation is available. We all then would have a week, plus or minus, whatever it is, to watch it on our own time, on our own schedule, right? And formulate our questions. So we can be prepared, having heard the budget presentation prior to us convening for the meeting. And then we can just jump immediately into the Q&A. I think it would certainly take, on the whole, the way I'm looking at it, it's no more time commitment from us, because we still have to hear the budget presentation and we still have to have the Q&A. But I do think it would be personally a lot more efficient, because we don't all have to do it at the same time on the same evening in the same week. It's going to be a lot easier, I think, to find the 30 minutes or 60 or 90, whatever, spread out throughout the week and throughout this budget season, for us to watch these on our own time. And then I think we could, again, be much more efficient in just jumping right to kind of any questions we have, and make this process a lot more easier, a lot easier. So I throw that out just for comments and suggestions.
I certainly like that suggestion. I will pose it to both Blythe and Jay on whether or not legally we're allowed to do that, meaning not having the budget presented to us in a live meeting as far as open meeting law. And as long as that's not an issue, I don't have an issue doing that. That works. I'm assuming that would work for especially someone like Jackie, who could maybe watch it when she's up at 3 a.m. doing a feeding. So
I had the same question as Brian, though, that he just posted, which is I watched the select board review of this. And so for me, it felt a little duplicative this past year, but I know that we all don't do that necessarily. So yeah, like I do also see that maybe there's a way for us to not shortcut this, but to not make it feel duplicative either for us or for the actual budget managers who are presenting to the select board and then presenting to us the same information. So yeah, I would love to kind of figure out if there's a more efficient way to do this, and would love to hear from Blythe around.
I think the people making the presentations, especially say, for example, Paul Zenny and Ingrid Alardi, who both present to their school committees, and then they both present to the select board, and then they both come and present to the advisory board. I would think that this is something they would be very interested in. And I am certainly interested in that. I would much rather, be able to shorten our meeting time as well as shorten the number of meetings. I just need to check with Jay on whether or not it's legal, just based on an open meeting law. And if Blythe knows the answer to that, I don't need to check with Jay. She's welcome to weigh in. If she doesn't, I will check with Jay and get back to everybody.
I think the suggestions of several to watch the meetings of the other boards and hear those presentations is a very effective way to handle it. The select board hasn't landed on exactly what we're going to do this year, but I know that we will. So I think that will probably give you everything you're looking for. And then if it hasn't, we would love your questions so we can make sure that when we do get to the, in a Zoom room with you, that we have all that ready for you, and ideally in advance.
That would be really great. So I will plan for that, but I will also speak to each person presenting as well as to Jay to make sure that it's legal. And then I will speak to each person presenting and make sure they are okay with not giving us a live presentation and just coming for a question series and then getting back to us with their answers. And as long as that's the case, then we might actually be able to eliminate a meeting somewhere in there if we can do that.
Susan,
And that would be great for everyone.
I noticed Kevin has had his hand up too. I don't know if it's about this particular.
I'm not the host, so I can't see.
Right.
I don't see that for some reason. I'm assuming it's because I'm not the host. I'm
It's
trying
okay. I'll
to
just jump in if that's
read,
okay.
I'm trying. I apologize. I'm trying to read the chats as they're coming up, and then when I click on that, I can see that someone's hand is raised, but it doesn't notify me because I'm not the host of the meeting. I apologize. So go ahead,
No worries.
Kevin.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me. Great. So as it pertains to the budget, that's an interesting idea that Jonathan had, because it does get kind of repetitive in nature as you go through the course of each of these different presentations. From the select board's perspective, we would want to have those individuals presenting within the confines of our public meeting just for that purpose, so that the public would be able to hear and see what we're hearing and seeing right before we open it up for questions, and in some cases open it up for public questioning. But in your case, being further down the line in terms of the process, I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And if it works in well with open meeting laws, I think that would be a great way to go. It's not only lessen the strain on the presenter, but also for the length of meetings as we get closer to springtime meetings. So great idea.
Well, I also think that people would be more interested in watching, whether it's live or watching them on YouTube, the advisory meetings, if they didn't also have to sit through a presentation, if they just were watching a question and answer series and getting what they would probably feel is their most pertinent questions answered as well ahead of time. And there's nothing worse than when we ask a question and someone says, well, I'll have to get back to you next week on that. So I think that it can work well as long as it's legal. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and one other follow-up. If you're going to ask Jay, Susan, I'd request you have one more tidbit in there. If there's some means that if we watch these recordings or recorded videos in advance, if we can submit questions to the presenter, not for purposes of offline Q&A, right, and doing anything back channel, but at least to address the concern of we ask a question and they say, I don't know, I'll get back to you, right? If we've got questions that we're going to be prepared to ask in our open meeting, they can be prepared for those questions and be prepared to answer them. So if there's some method we can use to kind of, say, hey, I've got questions on topics 1, 2, and 3. Can you be prepared to discuss this? Again, I think that would help from an efficiency.
I think that's where we're going to start running afoul of town meeting, open meeting laws, is if we begin to ask deliberative questions outside of the open meeting. So that's just my.
Yeah.
Again,
I'm not sure that we would be able to ask the questions. I think what I can do is make sure it's okay with Jay and then have everyone submit questions ahead of time and then email them to the person that's going to be coming, not to get their answers, but to say, here are the questions we have so far. Expect more in the live meeting, but here's a start. Make sure you have these answers when you come. As long as Jay doesn't have a problem with that, I think we can do that.
That's probably where we start running afoul of open meeting laws.
Well, I'm not the attorney, so we'll have to defer to Jay, but we're having an open meeting right now online, and this is successful online. We ought to be able to, in the way I look at it, we ought to be able to pose these questions online too. Again, not for purposes of getting the answers and replacing the dialogue with just written online interactions, but I would think we should be meeting the spirit of the law, so long as we're not doing any deliberations back channel or not publicly available. So if there was some method where we could say, hey, we watched the budget presentation you gave the select board, we've got this list of 3, 4, 10 topics that we'd like you to be prepared for the advisory committee. I would think as long as we have some means of publishing that, I would hope that there would be some accommodation for that, given the remote nature of all of this.
Mhm. I think it's going to come down to the semantics of how we word it, and I'll check with Jay. I'll check with Jay on both of these topics, on not having an actual presentation and us watching them ahead of time. And I will also ask if we're allowed to submit questions ahead of time. If we're not, though, I am happy to take an email list of questions from everyone prior, just to make sure that nothing gets forgotten in the moment. Not that that's the only questions you can ask. Obviously, you can ask any question you want, but just to make sure that no one forgets that a question has been asked, or if someone can't make it to a meeting, that their question can be asked by someone else, that kind of thing. I would really like, you know, I'm not trying to reorganize the advisory board in any way. I love the advisory board. I think it runs great. I think we all have a great working relationship together, but I would like to see it streamlined a bit. I don't think a lot of people attend our meetings simply because they're boring. They're not necessarily boring to us, or else we wouldn't be on the advisory board, but they are boring to other people. So the better attendance we can get from the community, I consider that a win. So again, I'm not looking to reorganize anything, but I would like to streamline some things. So I will get with Jay and get back to everyone, and would love to move forward as soon as we can. If no one has an objection to starting on March 17th, we'll set that as the agenda, and I will make sure to get these questions answered and give you the responses prior to March 17th, as well as any, but if we can view the budgets, the presentations ahead of time, that we get those as well.
Just
It will
one,
obviously depend on when they present. It depend on when they present to the select board, obviously, but you know, it shouldn't be an issue.
Just one point about the open meeting law that I know that you all realize. You can't, since you can't deliberate outside of a meeting, it's great that you're going to submit questions, but that should be done, you know, from one person to the person that's getting them, not copying the others. You know, it's so easy to do that because we all want to be aware of what you're asking, maybe not be duplicative, but you know, for us, for the select board, we always try to make sure those go through myself or a staff person, so that, you know, you're not all caught up in something when you absolutely didn't mean to do that. So we can talk about that more, Susan, offline if you'd like to.
Okay. That would be great. So David, if you want to go ahead with them, if there's nothing else, I want to make sure there's nothing else. Does anyone else have any concerns or anything they want to talk about? If not, I'll have David go ahead and present the minutes, and I will speak with Amy offline about figuring out how I go about becoming the host and setting the agenda. And I will speak with Jay on the semantics of things. I will get back to you all with answers to your questions, and I will speak with Blythe. If there's anything else anyone would like me to handle, let me know. Is there anything else anyone has questions about before we move on to the minutes? Okay, so right now we're planning for March 17th. Everyone could put that and all following Wednesdays in their calendar for now, starting at 7 p.m. I will get those posted with Amy and David, if you want to move forward with your minutes.
Okay, so I have minutes from the fall and a couple sets of minutes from the spring, where Sue Jacobson and I are trying to wrap up our spring process. I believe at the fall meeting we had right before the fall town meeting, we adopted the minutes of the 14th, but my notes from that are not perfect because I was taking the notes for that meeting. So I'm going to put them forward again just so we can get a vote on it. So I'm putting forward the meeting minutes from October 14th, 2020 for approval by the committee. I'm making a motion to accept those minutes. I need a second. Oh,
Second.
thank you. Susan? I need a roll call, which you need to call.
Yes, yes, sorry, I'm getting there. Sorry, I was muted. Yes, so all in favor of approving the minutes from October,
14.
Jackie,
Yes.
October 14th, Jackie?
Yes.
Okay, Mike,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Kiara,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and Susan, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, those minutes have been adopted.
I now have minutes from the meeting of October 21st, 2020. I'll make a motion for the committee to accept those minutes as revised. Need a second?
Second. Second,
And I need a roll call.
okay. Yep, Mike,
Yes.
Kiara,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Brian,
Yep.
Jonathan,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
I'm sorry, did I do Kristen? Apologize. Kristen, did I do you already?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I took my head. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't have everybody written down in front of me right now. I will obviously be more prepared for the next meeting. So I'm doing it from memory, so I apologize if I forgot anyone. Myself, yes. So those minutes passed as well.
I have minutes from the meeting of November 17th, which is the meeting we had right before town meeting. I'll make a motion to adopt those minutes as written.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, and all in favor of adopting the minutes from November 17th, Jackie,
Yes.
Kiara,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Okay, those minutes
Thank
were
you.
also adopted. Do we have
I
any
have
more?
I have three outstanding sets of meeting minutes from the spring. I only have two that are complete, so we'll go through those. I will complete the next set, the last set, which is the meeting that lasted about 4.5 to 5 hours in the middle of April. Sue was only able to join us for the second half of it. So she and I have been trying to rebuild the minutes based on going back to looking at the video again and again. So that meeting is the April 15th meeting, and I will not present those tonight, but I will present. I'm making a motion to adopt the meeting minutes from the meeting of June 3rd, 2020.
We do them, can we do both of them at the same time?
Sure. I'll make a motion. I think I can, but I think when we did this before, I had to go through them one at a time, but I'm not sure. The meeting minutes that I have prepared are from June 3rd and June 24th of 2020. Those are ready to go. I'll make a motion to have the committee approve those meeting minutes. Second. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Seconded by Jonathan. Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes from spring 2020, June 3rd and June 24th? Mike,
Yes.
Kiara,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So we have adopted the minutes from June 3rd and June 24th respectively, and we are still waiting on April, did you say 15th?
15th, exactly.
Okay, so we should, hopefully we'll have those at
Yeah.
our next meeting in March.
Gives me 2 months.
Is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss? Points they'd like to make? Anything anyone would like to say before we dismiss? Anyone at all? Okay, if there's no further business, I will adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. Thank you. I will get back to you all over email, and I will see you on March 17th.
Hey, all.
Night.
Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Amy, I will stay online if you'd like.